All right, let's do this thing. Howdy, it is me, James Victory. You are listening to my mellifluous voice. That is right. My dulcet, mellow, honeyed voice. And this is The Right Questions. It's the podcast called The Right Questions, and the reason is because we all have questions. But are we asking the right questions? Meaning the questions that will keep us sane. The questions that will get us paid to do what we love. Having answers is all well and good, but questions, baby, questions. And the right questions are the road to freedom. Today I want to talk to you about an idea that comes from my book, Effect Perfection. A book that I'm sure you got it all for Christmas, and if you didn't, then put it on your birthday list, because you got to have it. And the idea is the warrior, not worrier. I've been writing about this a lot lately, this idea, because I've been thinking about it in my own life. I've been suffering from it terribly, not suffering from being a warrior, mind you, suffering from the other half. And so I'm all about the warrior. I'm all about being a fully capable human being. I just want to have the ideas that I have and get them out into the world and not worry, just move forward. So in my writing and in my research, I came upon an old pal of mine, a guy named Friedrich Nietzsche, or Nietzsche. Because I was doing some research a while ago on his idea of the Superman, right? His idea of what would be the ultimate being. How would this person move? What would they think like? For Nietzsche, the Superman, and for you, the warrior, I mean, it really is he wanted to figure out the more advanced person of tomorrow. You know, what is this ideal kind of human being? This human being that you and I can aspire to be. And he came up with some surprising and kind of a challenging answer. So Nietzsche's strategy to identify this person or persons was he went through history and looked up the people that he thought had the best approach to life. And then he honed in on those qualities that made that person the way they are. He made a list for each person, right? And then used that to kind of quantify or qualify what would be an ideal type of human being. Actually, much like Napoleon Hill. I don't know if you're a Napoleon Hill fan, but you should be. There's another book that you should look at. It's called Think and Grow Rich. Think and Grow Rich is much like Effect Perfection. It just doesn't have pictures. But what Napoleon Hill did was he was an average guy, like you and I, or gal. And he looked around, and at the time, the late 1800s, there were these huge business tycoons, and he wanted to be like them. So what he did is he went and he visited all of them, made appointments, and visited all these captains of industry, you know, in automobile building and in the steel business, and, you know, just these huge names, the DuPonts. And what Napoleon Hill did was he interviewed each one and asked them a set of questions to figure out what it was that put them into business, what it was that made them who they are. I mean, the one question he left out, of course, was when your daddy handed you this industry, when your daddy handed you all this money, you know, that's always forgotten, that part. But he put together a list and came up with his 13 tenets and created the Think and Grow Rich, because it was a mindset for Napoleon Hill, much like the warrior mindset is for me. So Nietzsche put together his own list of people. And the first one he went to was another German, Johann Wolfgang von Goethe. Goethe is an amazing character. If you ever want to read about an interesting man, it would be Goethe. His name is Goethe. Goethe was a poet, and a playwright and a novelist. But he also had these civic ideas, very high civic ideas, and he became a politician and a statesman. He was also a theater director and a critic, right? So in his work includes plays and poetry and literature, and also aesthetic criticism, right? He was an art critic. But he was also a scientist, and he wrote treatises on botany and anatomy and fascinating things on color, right? So he was just a very curious fellow. But Nietzsche thought that Goethe was a great example of a human being in everything that he was capable of doing in his life. Nietzsche felt that Goethe would be the nearest anybody came to being a Superman. But he also, for this super character, he also mixed in some other interests like Napoleon, the French poets, both Montaigne and Voltaire, which is interesting. Three poets and philosophers in this group, right? And a politician, military leader, Napoleon, as well as Julius Caesar. I don't know much about Julius Caesar myself, but Nietzsche felt that his character had the qualities of a Superman. Okay. Nietzsche concluded that the Superman or warrior was going to have some wonderful characteristics, but he also came up with some really unexpected ones, and I think that makes it very interesting. Nietzsche himself was kind of surprised by his list, right? He thought that the superhumans of tomorrow would be deeply compassionate, very egalitarian, right? They were interested in equality, not interested in rivalry or battle, which is interesting for us to be talking about a warrior. And perhaps they would have ambitions in science because of Goethe's contributions. But Nietzsche found that being great involves some qualities that were a surprise to him. And these points in particular are our focus today. He found that greatness, check this out, means being interested in the salvation of mankind through culture. You know what that means? The salvation of mankind through culture. That means through our work, you and I, through being an artist, through being visionary, through being our own level of philosopher, through being ourselves. You, my friends, the non-combatant warrior, the artist, creator of culture and ephemera, you, my most beautiful friend, are the peaceful warrior. Oh, wow. I suffer from word association, so I just whipped that out, peaceful warrior. I thought that was kind of maybe funny to say. And I realized that Peaceful Warrior is a movie from I think the early 2000s with Nick Nolte. Take a look at it. I haven't seen it since the early 2000s, but I faintly remember it being pretty interesting. The Peaceful Warrior. Okay, the qualities that Friedrich Nietzsche came up with. He had a list of 10 or 12, and I've edited it down because some of them seem a little dated or quite frankly sexist, which is where a lot of Nietzsche's writings come from. But here's the list of 8 that I thought were pertinent. And I'm going to go through the list, and then we'll go through each one of them, okay? So, one of the first qualities, he said, was that they would be very independent and make their own values. The second is that Superman would accept that in the name of great things, they might need to hurt people. That might need some explanation, and we'll get to that. Number 3 is that they can be and should be selfish in strategic ways. And number 4, the Superman will never be resentful of the success of others. Number 5, they will accept suffering as a necessary component of good things. Number 6, they will understand, check this out, they will understand that they are hard to understand. And they may often be lonely. I don't know if that speaks to anybody out there, but we'll get to that one too. That's interesting. Number 7, they will not be humble, but rather delight in their own abilities, skills, and knowledge. And number 8, check this out. This one's a biggie, and we'll talk about this. They will be interested in the practical application of culture to raise the mentality of society. Wow, that is an idea that that almost seems dated these days, right? Using culture to raise the mentality of society. There's another artist that we're going to talk about in a little bit down the road here, where that idea will become pertinent and important and brought home. Okay, so we're going to go through the list. Check it out. Number 1, they will be very independent. They will make their own values. They won't ask, what do other people admire, and follow along. They will carve their own path. This is right out of Ralph Waldo Emerson's book, right? This is right out of Self-Reliance. I think Emerson was probably about 40 years old when Nietzsche was born. I think they had about 20 or 30 years in common in their lives. So I don't know who read who, but Emerson has this wonderful quote where he says, "Do not go where the path may lead. Go instead where there is no path and leave a trail." I have a tendency when I'm hitting a point to like bang on the table. I realize I can't do that in a podcast because everything shakes. But I'm going to repeat that. Do not go where the path may lead. Go instead where there is no path and leave a trail. Emerson, in Self-Reliance has a number of huge ideas on this subject of being a warrior, being that Superman. Emerson took a trip to England, and after meeting the super famous poets William Wordsworth and Samuel Taylor Coleridge, he wrote that he found them rather dry and boring people. and he mused. He says, if great men can be so ordinary, why can't ordinary men be great? Right? And that's what we're talking about. You and I, normal people, right? Well, we're not normal, but us. Why can't we be great? Why can't we be that? Why can't we be that warrior? And if everyone could recognize that they're uniquely significant human beings, right? So what does this mean? It means this idea of being independent. What does that mean? It means you don't need anyone else. You don't need anyone else. You don't need their opinion. You certainly don't need their judgment, right? We need to obey ourselves first. Understand that you have the answers. It's a fascinating phenomenon when I send out a questionnaire to somebody who wants to do some coaching. And in their answers, I just go through their answers and I highlight all these bits. And that is their question. That is their answer. They have their own salvation. They know it. You don't need others' opinion. You don't need their judgment. You need to trust that. You certainly don't need their fears. We are guided almost by others' fears. It comes out as these pre-recorded voices in our heads, right? The inner critic. That's other people's fears. They aren't ours. And we don't need other people's validation or permission. That's another thing that I feel that people come to me for. Hey, James, I'm doing this thing. What do you think? I'm like, what am I supposed to think? What do you want me to say? Yeah, that's great. Keep going. I'll do it. But you got to feel that. You have to feel that. You don't need other people's opinion. or their judgment, right? Or really, you don't need precedents. Because precedents, something that has gone before, something similar that has gone before, precedents are just setting you up to repeat what somebody else did, right? You need to obey yourself first. To not go begging, not ask, what do they want? What do they want? Right? We need to teach ourselves to say, in every situation, what do I have to say? What is my opinion on this matter? And train that. Train that. We're brought up to be responsible and reasonable. And those things lead us down into a little tiny box. Right? We should be audacious. We should be independent. We should be focused on our own goals and understand that our success comes through consistency. Just consistency and following through and developing that opinion, developing that independence where we feel so good in trusting ourselves. So we don't seek others' judgment, and we certainly don't compare ourselves with others. Because when it comes to your work, if your work makes you happy, it doesn't have to make sense to anyone else. So a warrior is independent. Numero dos. Here we go. The Superman accepts that in the name of great things, they might need to hurt people. Okay, sounds crazy, right? That sounds almost brutal. But that means we're jumping off a bridge, right? So what it means is we're brought up to be nice, right? When you're on the playground, everybody is supposed to play nice. You're supposed to share, and things like being nice or play well together or stay within the lines. Those things can spill over where we're using them all the time and we don't need to. Right now, you're thinking, oh man, I wish James Victory could be my mentor, my guru. Hell, I wish he was my coach. Well, you can make that happen. Go to yourworkisagift.com. There's a questionnaire that will probably help you out, but it'll also give you access to a free call. So let's talk. Let's free you from overwhelm and creative frustration. Let's build your business and help you get paid to do what you love. Again, go to yourworkisagift.com. Let's talk. We don't need to follow the rules all the time. The rules are good, but we're smart, independent people. We don't need rules because we have our own ethics, our own morals to follow. We know the difference between right and wrong. So we don't need rules. We have our own. And we don't have a mean or aggressive bone in our body. We couldn't possibly be anything except kind and compassionate to people. But we don't always have to be nice, and we don't always have to please others. Being responsible and reasonable, that thing, if you follow that trail, that will give you a minivan and a white flag that you can wave out the window and say, I fucking give up. So your life is not about other people. Focus on your goals. Focus on you. In the name of great things, they might need to hurt people. You're not going to hurt anyone. Accept that. You're not going to hurt anyone. But we do need to follow our own real rules and do need to focus on our own goals. Number 3, they can be selfish in strategic ways. This is a big idea. I'm a parent. I'm a husband. It's easy for me to give my time away, a lot of my time away. Even my thoughts, my mental capacity to give that away. take care of other people first, right? We've got to protect our time. We've got to protect our time, and we've got to protect our work because it's important. We're doing important work. You are doing important work. You need to understand that. And you need to make time for that work. That means carve it out. That means you may want to think about getting up early. Our work takes time. And we have to literally make time, right? We have to make time for it. We have to set boundaries. This time is for me, and tell everybody, do not bother me until the clock says this. I am busy. I am taking care of everybody by taking care of myself. So we need to protect your time for you. And we need to ask for more. That's being selfish. I mean, every job that comes to me and they say, hey, we've got this much money. I'm like, well, that sounds good, but how about this much money, right? Ask for more. Ask for more money. Ask for more time. Ask for more creativity. That's being selfish. It's okay to want. It's okay to desire because you see the bigger picture. It's also okay to ask for help. Super okay to ask for help. It doesn't mean you want collaborators all the time. It doesn't mean you need people to jump in and take your shit. So when you ask for help, be specific. I need help on this one thing. Can you help me? So we need to be selfish in strategic ways. Important. Okay. Number 4. The Superman will never be resentful of the success of others. Right? That's kind of obvious. Because if you are resentful of the success of others, that means you're poo-pooing your own gifts. Because you're comparing, right? You're comparing yours to theirs. We should be happy for other people. We should always seek betterment of others. I had this wonderful experience just recently where I was talking bad about a person in my life, a person who's causing a lot of pain and aggravation in my life. And I basically said, I said to someone else, man, I wish this person would fucking die. And the person I was talking to said, I hope she gets better. I was like, wow, that's beautiful. So not only not being resentful, but thinking betterment for everybody. That's good for you. I want more for you. Because I want more for myself. Right? So we need to focus on ourselves. And when you're resentful of others, you're judging. You're poo-pooing your own gifts when you compare, right? So, number 5. We're getting to number 5. They will accept suffering as a necessary component of good things. This is important. This is molto importante, super important. And that word suffering, we hate it, right? It sounds terrible, but it doesn't mean suffering. It does mean you got to do the work. And you got to accept sacrifices. You may get tired. You may not be able to do everything. You may not be able to go to the party. You may have to say, hey, that's a marvelous idea. I can't do that right now. Again, setting boundaries. I've got to do this thing. I mean, for me, I always tried to teach my kids, when they're doing work, when they have to do a chore, I have to say, hey, by the way, do it right the first time because you're going to hate doing it the second time, because I hate that. I hate doing things the second time or a third time or a fourth time. And I have 2 jobs right now where I'm doing that. I have to go back and do these iterations. Don't want to, don't like to. And for me, it's suffering, but it is a necessary component of doing good things. I have to do the work. So we have to accept the sacrifices necessary. That sometimes means another word that we hate, which is discipline. But discipline is freedom. We have to get used to that. We have to get used to employing discipline in our lives. Self-discipline. Discipline is freedom. What do you mean by discipline? I mean ignoring pleasure is what I mean. Ignoring pleasure or leisure. Yeah, all I want to do is, I want to wake up, have breakfast, crawl in bed, and watch a movie. That's all I want to do. Someone pay me for that, because that's all I want to do. No, I don't want to criticize the movie. I don't want to write about it. I don't want to blog about it. I just want to watch it. Right? So we have to ignore current pleasure because we're focused on the future. And ignore leisure. That means do with less. That means live below our means, right? Do without things for a little while, because the future holds the bigger reward. We have to remember that. And listen, big things can happen fairly quickly. Your life can change fairly quickly. I've seen it. I've helped people do that. I've helped people change their lives in fucking weeks. I shit you not. Big things can happen very quickly, but it has to be by motivated, focused effort. And sometimes accepting the sacrifices, because we know that there are bigger rewards in the future. I have this thing this Hafiz poem that I like that says, habits are human nature. Why not create some that will mint gold? I love that. Creating new habits that mint gold. So you, my dear friend, my beautiful, peaceful warrior, what habits do you have that you can leave? What habits do you have that you can just put aside? Write them down. Write down what your habits are. Whether it's cookies that you're doing, or whether it's your time wasting distractions. What's holding you back, and which ones can you leave behind? It's a good question for you. So in line with accepting suffering as a necessary component of good things, it means, are you scheduling your time? Are you putting in the hours? Are you waking early? Are you taking time alone? So accepting suffering as a necessary component of good things. And one thing we have to do is be very kind to ourselves, be very gentle to ourselves, and also accept patience as a part of that suffering. We have to do the work. We don't have to hate it, right? Be patient and see the bigger picture, and know that the greater reward is in the future. And it comes by doing the work. Okay, number 6. They will understand that they are hard to understand. And therefore may be lonely. Do you get that? I feel it. Try to explain to people what you do for a living. Trying to explain to people how your work changes people's lives. I've got people who come to me and they're like, I just paint flowers. I'm like, no, those flowers are an addition to other people's lives. Those flowers make you a better person. Do you enjoy making them? That makes you better. That makes you a greater contributor to the human condition. Keep making those flowers. They're going to get better. They're going to get more beautiful. They will help other people. But we have to understand that we're kind of hard to understand. And it may feel like you're lonely and out there by yourselves. It's similar to, again, Ralph Waldo Emerson, right? He saw people leading lives that were based on tradition. Religious forms and societal habits, right? So what he said was, society has chosen for us. No one could be themselves because they were all too busy being what they were supposed to be. They were having roles and titles that everybody knew who they were and what they were doing. They couldn't be misunderstood. Because it sucks to be misunderstood. It sucks to be lonely. Society wants to choose, to give you your role, give you your life. We do the, you go to school, then you go to college, and then you meet a girl and you're a boy, and you get married, and then you get a house, and you get a dog, and then you do this stuff, right? And then you retire so you can go off and do what you want to do when you're 80, right? That's just dumber than dirt. We're too busy being what we're supposed to be. We can't be independent. We can't be selfish. We can't be hard to understand. So many poets have said that, talked about loneliness, and loneliness, that's the gift. That's the gift. That's time alone where you get to be with your own thoughts. It's okay to be hard to be understood. Because guess what? You're not normal. You are creative. You see and feel differently. When you really allow yourself, you see and feel differently. Do not feel the need to explain yourself to other people. Stop wasting your time trying to influence people to like you or understand you. Just do the work. It's up to them to catch up to you. Right? It's my job. It's my job to be me. I want to get paid to be James Victory. I have to introduce people to this idea often. I say, you know what your job is now? Your job is as an artist. You now have a job and you're an artist. So now you're going to spend 6 hours, 4 hours, 6 hours, 8 hours, 10 hours every day being that artist. Maybe more. That's not easy to understand. But like I said, guess what? You are not normal. You don't have to be understood by anybody. It is not your job to be liked or understood. But do your job. Do your job. Get it out into the world, and everybody will follow suit. Everybody will understand. You see? That's how it works. Numero 7. Number 7, they will not be humble, but rather delight in their own abilities and skills and knowledge. I love that. You know what that means? That means you get to play. You get to brag. You get to show off. God, when I was a kid, I was a fucking show off. And I get it. We all want to be seen, we want to be heard, and we want to be appreciated. When I was a kid in school, I wanted to be seen, I wanted everybody to hear me, and I wanted to be appreciated for what I was doing. For my goofiness, for my poetry. You know what people get paid? People get paid a shit ton of money to tell jokes. Isn't that crazy? That's like the weirdest thing in the world, to get paid to tell jokes. Then you can go have like your own specials and you get albums and you get like, it's crazy, right? We want to be seen, we want to be heard, and we want to be appreciated. And by appreciated, I mean 2 things: loved and paid. So don't be humble. Delight in your abilities and your skill and your knowledge. It's okay. You do not need to be shy or hesitant to show your work. Please don't. You can be a shy person, that's okay. But don't be hesitant to show your work, because everybody's waiting for you. That's the thing you need to understand, my lovely shy person, is people still love you and they want to hear from you. So you don't have to stand up in front of an audience and go, well, this is what I did, and this is why I did it, and this is why you should love it. But you got to show your work. You got to be able to say what children all around the world are capable of saying until it gets taught out of them. Until society teaches it out of them, right? Goes back to another Emerson quote. Society everywhere is in conspiracy against the manhood of every one of its members. That means society around the world wants to take your uniqueness out, wants to take your humanity out, wants you to fit in. But you have that gift of childhood. You had it then, you still have it now inside of you, and it goes like this. Hey, look at me. Look at what I can do. 3 powerful words. Look at me. We call that marketing. Marketing and talking about yourself. Marketing and selling your work. Hey, look at me. We just want to be seen and heard and appreciated. So you won't be humble. You won't be a braggart or gross about it, but rather delight in your abilities and skill and knowledge, as Nietzsche says. You got to make work that makes you happy and be proud of that. Be proud of yourself. Be proud of your work. I love the shit I make. I love it so much that I'm terrible at selling it because I just want to give it away. I want everybody to have it. And it's okay to get criticism on your work, but you got to still follow your own way. You know, I love writing about this idea of look at me, or this idea of being weird. You know, the things that made you weird as a kid make you great today, right? But I've realized that the weirdness is not the core. Being weird and being able to say, look at me, and showing your work, loving what you do and showing your work is not weird. That's an act of self-love. That's an act of loving yourself and loving your work so much that you want to share it. That's like having the cutest, softest puppy in the world and knowing that if you just let everybody pet your puppy, everybody will get a smile. It's like that. So we need to practice that and not being humble and delighting in our skills and our knowledge and our creativity. You know, it's funny. Isn't that a funny idea for a warrior to have, for a Superman to have, to not be humble, delight in their abilities and skills and knowledge? And the reason is so then you can share them. That's why. You imagine if there was a actual physical Superman, like right, the Superman, but he couldn't share his abilities or skill or knowledge because he was shy, because he didn't feel comfortable about it, because they might not like me. Right? That'd be hilarious. The withering Superman. Okay, number 8. They will be interested in the practical application of culture to raise the mentality of society. How frickin' beautiful is that? That means understanding that your work, the practical application of culture, your work will raise the mentality of society. If you're a creator, I don't care what work you're doing, as long as you're not working for the Nazi fucking party, bunch of skinheads, you are raising the mentality of society. That is about living a purposeful life. That is about being what Marcus Aurelius called a value generator. You're creating value for other people. And that is the job of the artist. To give value to the almost ordinary. You know, to the people who say, well, I just paint flowers. Yeah? Well, have you been to a frickin' museum lately? You notice the amount of frickin' paintings of frickin' flowers there frickin' are? Right? Yeah, I just painted flowers. Yeah, it worked out for Matisse and Monet and Van Gogh and, whatever other still life painters are out there. The job of the artist, the job of the creator, the job of the designer, the job of the coder, the job of the musician, the job of anybody with a creative bone in their body is to give value to our lives. One of the prime examples of this is one of my favorite artists, Robert Motherwell, American modern abstract artist. He back in 1970, I think it was, he was invited by Congress to give testimony, right? Because there was legislation introduced about the Environmental Quality Education Act, which was to encourage teaching about the environment in schools and colleges and universities, right? To teach about more about the world. In schools and colleges, and they needed someone to come in and talk about art, like the purpose, right? I've always kept his response, and this I'm going to read to you now, but this is just a part of it. In front of Congress, he says this: "I speak only as an artist. But to speak as an artist is no small thing. Most people ignorantly suppose that artists are the decorators of our human existence, the aesthetes to whom the cultivated may turn when the real business of the day is done. But actually, what an artist is a person skilled in expressing human feeling. Far from being decorative, the artist's awareness is one of the few guardians of the inherent sanity and equilibrium of the human spirit that we have. How beautiful is that? I speak only as an artist. But to speak as an artist is no small thing. And that's Robert Motherwell. You need to remind yourselves of this. To understand that expressing the feelings of being alive, of joy, of pain, of confusion, that makes your work a gift, right? Because now you're giving a piece of yourself. With your work, it can just make you happy. Or it can express the feelings of being alive. Either way, guess what? It serves the world. This title of a warrior or Superman is very useful, very helpful for getting us to think about who we want to be, who we want to evolve into, who we want to relax back into, because we are this already. Each of us should have a sense of what we would like to be if we were this better, more productive, kind, and efficient version of ourselves. And that's the warrior mindset. I love you guys. Thank you for being here. Listen, I want to help you. That's my job. Right? I want to help you get paid to do what you love and stay sane in the process. Let me help you. Ask questions. Bring your questions here. Write in howdy@yourworkisagift. Send in your questions. And we can turn it into the right question. I love you. I will talk at you later. Adios. Thank you. Bye-bye.